In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, Democrats demanding a legal investigation of Jeff Sessions. Some of them claim the Attorney General committed perjury during his Senate confirmation hearings last month. But are those accusations completely overblown? Joining us now from Washington to analyze, George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley. So, Professor, does Sessions face any sort of perjury charge, yes or no?
No. I don't even think this is a close case. He was asked a fairly convoluted and extended question that dealt with a recent media release about campaign involvement with the Russians. He answered that question. He went beyond what the question asked him, which was what he would do about it. And then he answered that question, and then he went beyond it to say, and I haven't had any contacts with the Russians. It was inartful. I mean, it turns out that he has had contacts with Russians. He should have corrected it,
yep.
But that's not perjury. And the standard for perjury is quite high. You have to show intent. There's only been a handful of people who have been prosecuted in the last 6 decades for perjury and other related issues in Congress, because the standard is quite difficult to meet.
Right. And the next step seems to be a special prosecutor. I keep on hearing about a special prosecutor. I think Democrats want a special prosecutor. What would that mean, and why would there be a special prosecutor? To do what?
Well, you see, the odd thing about that is if you ask for a special counsel to be selected and the acting deputy attorney general could order that if they view this as a conflict for the department to handle the question, you still have to articulate what it is that they're investigating.
Yeah, I mean, what is the investigation? Is it about Russian interference with the election and then being in cahoots with the Trump campaign? Is that what they're getting after?
Yeah, see, the problem is that we don't have any evidence of collusion. But even if you go to say that maybe there was collusion, the question is, what's the crime? It's not a Logan Act violation of interfering with foreign relations. We haven't seen any type of allegation with regard to that since the Flynn episode, and he wasn't even charged under that.
Right.
We haven't had any allegations of money being exchanged from the Russians. And so the question is, what is the special counsel going to investigate?
Right.
Is he going to come in and say, yep, we were hacked by the Russians,
right,
much like we've hacked other countries?
Yeah.
Is he going to investigate some nameless guy in St. Petersburg? You usually have to articulate some type of criminal act, and that hasn't happened yet. Now, maybe evidence will come forward,
right,
but until it does, you're getting ahead of your skis on this.
It seems to me that the only problems the Trump administration is having is not the contacts with the Russians, it's what they say about said contacts. Is that how you see it?
I think that's right.
If there's nothing else besides that, then this thing dies.
Well, that is a problem. The White House has not exactly been performing as well as it should. It's been sort of 3 beats behind. For example, in the Sessions case, there should have been a clarifying letter that was sent, and this would have been a total non-issue. He should have recused himself. Quite frankly, I don't understand why a recusal wasn't readily embraced early on. It's a really good deal. You can pull out your critical people out of this investigation, which is likely to go nowhere. They can focus on other things, and you won't have the drip, drip, drip of this type of controversy. So I don't know why this wasn't recognized early on. The White House has said, we're totally cool with an investigation. We're going to have a lot of people recuse themselves,
yeah,
and you can take this as far as you want to go.
Well, if Sessions' staff was as competent as the Factor staff, they definitely would have let him know that this thing was hanging out there, and we wouldn't have had this problem. All right, Professor Turley, thank you very much. Is the press instigating illegal acts by reporting on them? In the Factor follow-up segment tonight, government leaks and the media. On Tucker Carlson's show last night, Attorney General Jeff Sessions blasted the constant flow of leaks that are undermining the Trump administration.
We are having a lot of leaks today in Washington that I do believe are troubling. A lot of it would appear to be in violation of the law, and it's an unhealthy trend, and we've got to do better about it. I do believe every department needs to take a greater interest in maintaining proper security.
Despite concerns that these leaks may be breaking laws, many in the mainstream media are unfazed.
We're getting great print coverage by the hour, and that's the only reason this administration is admitting things. Trump didn't act on Flynn until it was exposed by the press. The Attorney General didn't recuse himself till today because the report ran in today's newspapers. This is an administration being driven by truth that's coming from somewhere else.
Joining us now with a reaction from Washington, journalist and author Ronald Kessler, whose newest book is The First Family Detail, now in paperback, and Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein. So is the press doing its job, Ron, or is it aiding and abetting illegal leakers? What do you think?
Well, these revelations are not that big a deal. You know, whether Flynn lied was not a surprise to the White House. They already knew that he had lied previously. And this does compromise national security very seriously, because who wants to cooperate with the CIA and become an asset and reveal, for example, terrorist plots that could wipe out millions of people with WMD attacks if they feel that their secrets will not be kept confidential? You have a press that's totally out of control. AP ran a story about the fact that the CIA had an asset in Yemen who was revealing information about bombs that would be put on planes going to the United States that could not be detected normally. There was no abuse. There was no failure. The CIA was doing its job, and yet AP ran this story, and of course that meant that the asset was gone, compromised. That could have resulted in many deaths.
Yeah.
So you really have a press that's out of control and arrogant.
They definitely are arrogant. I will give you that. Richard, I just remember the last 8 years, there weren't that many exclusives and that many just revelations coming out of the press, not a lot of investigations. Now, just in the course of 3 months, it's like every single day there's this front page splash, breaking news in the print media, you know, constant breaking news, revelations, investigations. They're getting all this stuff from somewhere. These leakers are just running wild, and the press is loving it.
Yeah. Well, a couple things, Jesse. First, there were leaks during the Trump campaign, hardly the doing of Obama holdovers. Second, the stench of hypocrisy is just a little strong here, considering Donald Trump 100 times on the campaign trail extolled the virtues of WikiLeaks. He said, "I love WikiLeaks." So somehow, now that his goose is getting cooked, you know, it looks a bit different. And third, I think what's going on here is, look, Trump has whopper after whopper, whether it's the Electoral College margin or the murder rates or whatnot. It's one after another. And I think people in the administration don't know that the truth will actually come out. They see that the truth is kind of Trump's enemy, and that people working for Trump see, well, it works for him to say things that aren't true. Maybe it'll work for me, too.
Well, the difference between the WikiLeaks revelations, that was just John Podesta talking trash and embarrassing details about Chelsea. These leaks involve national security and taped conversations between your national security advisor and other people, or conversations President Trump is having with the leaders of Mexico and Australia. A little bit different.
Yeah, here's how it's the same. 17 intelligence agencies said the Russians, using WikiLeaks, among other things, were trying to subvert the U.S. elections. That's pretty serious. And if it turns out, we don't know the facts yet, that if any of Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, Carter Page, Michael Flynn were talking with the Russians, and incidentally, it was not just a coincidence that the WikiLeaks dropped an hour after the Access Hollywood tape came out. If any of that turns out to be true, and I'll stipulate, we don't know that yet, that's treason.
Well, Hillary lost the election because she was a terrible candidate. It didn't have anything to do with the Russians.
Winning 3 million more votes.
You know, on top of this,
Ronald, please respond to Richard.
On top of this, Eric Holder, when he was Attorney General, made it much more difficult for the FBI to uncover the sources of these leaks. On the one hand, you know, this is very sensitive information, so it's very compartmented. But Eric Holder imposed these rules, making it extremely difficult for the FBI. First of all, if they go after a press organization to get contacts, they have to notify them them beforehand so they can challenge it in court. And secondly, they can't issue a search warrant against a reporter unless the reporter is actually under criminal investigation. So really, Holder tied the hands of the FBI, not based on anything in the Constitution, not based on any law passed by Congress, and that's going to make it much more difficult.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, I was on the Washington Post during Watergate under Ben Bradley, and there's no way that he would have run any of these stories.
And President Obama went after leakers harder than any other president in modern day history. And now all of a sudden there's leaks out of the Trump White House, and Trump wants to plug the leaks, and Trump is this bad guy that's trying to destroy the First Amendment and whistleblower. So when the President Obama goes after people, it's leakers, and then when Trump goes after people, it's whistleblowers.
But Obama
you don't
didn't
see the
say
hypocrisy
that the press
there?
is the enemy of the people, Jesse. Obama didn't say that. Trump has.
Fake news is the enemy of the people, not the press. There's a distinction to that, Richard.
Well, he said both. He actually initially said it was the media that was the enemy of the people, and then he said fake news, and we don't really know what he means by that. Look, the fact is, it's statements
I know
like
what he
that.
means. He means this fake dossier that claimed he was doing God knows what in a hotel room in Russia that he never went to. But guys, I got to run. Gentlemen, thank you very much.